We are coming on live to you today from a few different places in order to host this first Inner Child Peace Summit, which is so exciting. I am here with you with Tim Wheatley, and we have Valerie as one of our guests, and others will be joining in as well. So that's been shared over to where Misfits Fit now. And so we're going to get back to the actual moment instead of the distraction of technology and say that Tim Wheatley and I are here for the first Inner Child Peace Summit of its kind. And we are grateful that you are taking the time to be here with us, to be fully present in this moment, and to understand that all of the inner healing work that you do for yourself, you are actually doing 7 generations forward and 7 generations backward too. And so it's important for us all to understand what we are doing as individuals is about so much more than just what it seems on the surface. In a world that we are living in that is actually multidimensional, just like we are, where it is not just the literal reality, but it is also the symbolic, the energetic, and the mythic realms that we are all playing in. So I am going to actually turn the first piece of tonight's summit over to Tim Wheatley, who has created an insightful presentation I look forward to having you and me both experience. Before then, I will be guiding you through a visualization that will ultimately, I suspect, build off of itself with everything Tim and I are doing together, as often happens. So Tim, how are you?
Well, I'm really excited. I'm super excited about about broadcasting the information. A lot of this stuff, it really goes against the mainstream of what has been inner child work. And it goes against a lot of traditional therapies that are out there on ways to calm down. And so that's I'm really excited to get started with this.
Amazing. And can you actually share a intro to yourself and your background in inner child work, just so that people understand how much you bring to the table?
Perfect. Well, let's see. That's a scary place of where I'm been. Well, it all started, if you can imagine, this little kid who's 5 years of age with a little suitcase full of clothes and all my favorite toys, waiting for my dad to come pick me up. And I'm waiting there because he promised that he would come pick me up. And this was the first time I was ever to go off with my father. And I'm on the back of the couch looking out the window, waiting for him with my little cardboard suitcase. I remember it black with these brass little buckles. Now, I'm waiting, and it's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And my mom's wanted me to come and eat. And I'm like, no, I'm waiting for dad. 7 o'clock comes, 8 o'clock. And my mom came and said, do you really think that he was actually going to show up? Now, a 5-year-old doesn't have the understanding of having a father that had mental illness. The 5-year-old goes, what have I done? What is going on with me that is so wrong that my own father wouldn't want to be here? And then my mom saying, did you really think he was going to show up? Which just validated me going, I am not good enough. And even my mom knows that. And so that's where everything in my life anchored onto. I didn't know that as a 5-year-old. But then going onward, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, growing up, all of these things would happen, and then nothing would actually transpire. No matter what I would do, it would be never good enough. Married when I was 18, divorced when I was 20. Why? Because I wasn't good enough. No matter what I did throughout, it was always because I wasn't good enough. Now, that's where my foundation of trying to figure out why I did what I did. My background, by the time I was 6, 7, I was psychic. 13, doing traditional psychology work, trying to figure out what is actually going on. Traditional psychology courses. 14, transcendental meditation. You know, people are out there partying at 16 and I'm doing TM and I'm learning reflexology and massage and all of these other components, and I'm reading Freud, Jung, Nietzsche, all kinds of crazy stuff. Then I started developing what I did not know when I was a child, because growing up in Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada, there weren't the vast amount of multicultural people that we have now. And back then, there was no place that was actually teaching this other than occult stuff. And I was like, this is meditation. And anyway, from there, I went into some deep spiritual work, deep transpersonal psychology. I've lived in India. I've studied with enlightened masters for years, all over the planet. I've done breath work. I've done virtually every modality that is out there, trying to figure out why I do what I do and how come I'm so messed up. And that's where, even it wasn't up in, like, I went through a transpersonal psychology program, and everything that was out there seemed to be okay, whoa, don't feel that. Just calm down, take a deep breath in. There, don't you feel so much better now? And it was like, yeah, but 10 minutes from now, I'm right back at that. And I'm upset emotionally and all of these components. And that's when I started to realize, if I actually stepped into the upset, I would find some answers, because avoiding it sure wasn't guiding me anywhere. And that's where I'm at to present today.
That's amazing. Thank you for everything you've been through in order to be who you are today, Tim. And so I look forward to learning what you have learned as the very lovable man that you are and grew into and always were.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, let us start. The inner child peace process. That's me, Tim Wheatley, and yes, I'm commonly known on the internet as the grumpy guru. It's a very interesting and lovable term, of which I'll accept. So, what happens with this inner child that we have locked away? There are 4 stages that we have to go through in order to do any inner child work, inner child therapy, or trauma therapy. Most PTSD, the vast majority of PTSD or people with PTSD have some sort of early childhood trauma. Now it's coming out as, it's called an ACE, adverse childhood experience. And the vast majority of us all have one. If we look at a child, even if they drop an ice cream, their life is over. And the degree of which these children experience emotion is something that, as an adult, we can regulate how angry we get. But if you look at a child, I got the very beautiful fortune to be looking after my 2 grandbabies, 1 5 and 1 2, and those emotions that those children have are on toggle switches. They're either on or off. And the 4 stages now is for us to get into connection with that part. We have to give ourselves permission to connect, to correct, and then integrate. So getting on with the first stage of this is permission. We must be honest with ourselves. There's a lot of people in spiritual communities that really want to be love and light when they're depressed, when they're sad, when they've got a breakup, when they're in the midst of an abusive relationship of one form or another. We need to be honest with our emotions. We need to feel these. We need to be able to, in permission, to feel it 100%. Because this is how we reconnect with that little part of us, is through the emotions. It's not a suppressed, it's not a cognitive thing, it's emotional. And it's this emotional bridge. We need to be open to experience that emotional bridge to connect us to that little part in our past. People have done a lot of things in their lives in order to prevent feeling what that little part of us has always felt. And in order to move forward, we have to accept ourselves. One of the biggest components of that is we actually have to accept all of us. We can't just simply go and accept all the love and light and all the dark parts or the shadow parts we don't even want to talk about. That little part of us who's been sitting alone in the shadows has been there for a long time. So if you can, just take in a deep breath in and just allow a sense of permission to come over you completely. And just, even if all this is for the next few minutes, just take permission to look inside. And when we do that and we step into this emotional arena, we then start to connect with what's going on. We connect with our feelings, our emotions. We connect to actually owning. And in this connection process, there are 3 vital components. One is to be accountable, one is to be responsible, and one is to take ownership. These are your feelings, your emotions. And when you can give yourself permission to connect with these emotions and feelings and to truly, truly feel it fully, only then can you start to cross that emotional bridge and track it back, tracking it back emotionally. And you can go in and how you're currently feeling your upset. If you stay in the upset, and I mean stay in the upset, people say, oh, you need to go for a walk around the block. And I'm saying, no, it's actually the complete opposite. If you go for a walk around the block, are you feeling it fully or are you avoiding it? Now stepping into that emotion and track it back as far as you go to the very first time you felt that upset. That is how you'll start to develop this relationship, a new formed relationship between you and that little you inside. Now, there's a lot of traditional components and therapies that get into that and say, okay, now this is it. You understand traditional psychotherapy gets you down and digs up all of this dirt and leaves you feeling worse than you did before. And we're actually, our brains are wired to protect us. When we start to get too close, when things are perceived that there's that little part of you that is going to start to feel that again, that feel upset for me, feel not good enough. No. Whoa, Tim, you don't want to do that because you're going to feel that not good enough again. No, stop. Let's just play small. Let's just keep our head down. Let's just keep quiet. And the part of the brain when it perceives this is the thalamic gate. And when I say it reacts big time, I mean in 0.33 milliseconds. It is the fastest response time of any component of our brain and our body. It reacts with our vagus nerve instantly. We have I'm not going to get into the neuroscience because it is amazing. So what happens typically when you start to get that? It's a red alert goes off. The security guards come out. They go, "We'll protect little Timmy." Okay. Now then, specific anxiety binding mechanisms come out to play. And that can be anything. We can get into the addictions. And addictions aren't necessarily to drugs. Addictions are to Facebook. Addictions are to love. Anything that allows us to avoid that little part of us that doesn't believe we are lovable, that doesn't believe we are good enough. You know, our cognitive adult mind goes, "I am lovable just the way I am." And as soon as that happens, within 0.33 milliseconds, your body automatically reacts to go, "Oh no, you're not. You remember when dad left and he never showed up?" Yeah. So addictions come into play. Then medication or meditation, it does not matter whether it's meditation or medication. It is just another anxiety binding mechanism. This was what was traditionally taught for centuries on what to do when that thalamic gate signal goes off, when that little part of you comes up. All wars, all greed, every kind of boastful action, it's all been there, trying to prove what you are and what you're not. Now, it's not what you do, it's what you think about when you're doing it. And there are a multitude of things that will make you feel better or be better. Those are two different and very separate things. If you want to do things to feel better, the world has provided us a bountiful amount of things that we can do to feel better. And these anxiety binding mechanisms are all out there, aren't they? Except for during COVID. COVID has actually removed the vast majority of our anxiety binding mechanisms. If we remember back to the lockdown, you know, for some people around the world, that's now. What did they take away? Well, I used to go to the bar all the time. Oh, we'll take that away. Oh, man, whenever I felt, you know, I got to do something, I wasn't good enough. Hey, I'm going to go date. And you're locked in. You're locked down. So there's no dating. No, let's watch football, baseball, soccer, tennis, soccer. Nope, all that's taken away. So the typical anxiety binding mechanisms have been removed, which has forced people to take a look at that little part of them that they've cut off for a very long time. And these avoidance techniques have been used forever. There's modalities that have come into play. And I said, there's nothing wrong with the modalities that are out there. It is a right tool. The only problem, it has been used at the wrong time. It has been avoiding that little part of me. It's like, oh man, I'm so stressed out. I'm so stressed out. I don't want to feel stressed out. What do? You go do yoga. You go meditate. You go to the bar. You go get, a hookup. Now, what would have happened is maybe you would have wanted to avoid that, or maybe taken one step in and you might have gone through traditional psychology, transpersonal therapy, EMDR, EFT tapping, energy work. Oh, I got to talk to my tarot, or go to a counselor. Now, again, I'm saying there is nothing wrong with these modalities. Nothing. However, are they being used to go deeper, or are they being used to avoid the current symptom of the upset? So let's talk about what happens now. Now, Inner child therapy meets neuroscience. Now we're talking memory reconsolidation. Now, what the heck does that mean? Kareem Nader in McGill University in Canada was one of the first people to prove that a memory can be changed, can be altered. The meaning that you're attaching to it can actually be changed. How many years have we all heard the expression, you can't teach an old dog new tricks? But in 2000, it was proven that you can. And not just with dogs, with all of us. For years, it's been shown that we can't change the past. We just have to learn to live with it. Currently living with the new now, the new reality. Well, if we just simply go in and accept it was what it was. Well, if I, as an adult, I talked to a therapist and I realized my dad was doing the best that he could with what he had. And my response is, who cares what my dad was doing or didn't do? What was going on for little me that is anchored on those and anchored on to these meanings? And I'll give you an example. When I say people still smoke. Well, people still smoke because they know, they have an awareness, they have an understanding that cigarette smoking causes cancer, can lead to death. Okay? Yes, I know there are people that question that. However, the vast majority of scientists say that. And these people still know that, yet they still do. So just because you're aware of something does not mean it's going to change. And however, we can change these meta beliefs. Our meta beliefs are what that little part of you is held on to this whole time. There are only 4 meta beliefs. They're unlovable, undeserving, unworthy, and not good enough. So when it comes to making these shifts, we have to connect. Now, within the next few minutes, I'll go over some of these details of what's in store for us.
Just before you go any further, the meta beliefs are unworthy, undeserving.
Unworthy, undeserving, unlovable, and not good enough.
Unlovable and not good enough.
And these are everyone on the entire planet. They all do this. It's not like this is something different. I've traveled around the world and everyone is either trying to prove that they are good enough or they are trying to disprove that they're not. And this was found out in so many studies, recent ones since the year 2000, was these people who have achieved the greatest and highest standards right now in society are some of the most depressed. They have no sense of purpose and they have no happiness because they got what they thought was going to give it to them. So it wasn't that they were actually going in deep to try to realize that they are good enough and were good enough just the way they were. They were trying to prove that they are. So, and then it gets into the correction phase. Woo! Now, the correction phase is where the vast majority of traditional training doesn't do. They don't get into this. They get into connection. Inner child work has been around for 50 years, but it's been about connecting with that part of you, not correcting. So we need to now bridge those two, and there are a specific modality that I developed called inner convergence therapy, which works with hypnosis and NLP and visualizations and traditional psychology and psychotherapy and spirituality. But to get into real quickly, to go over how this correction happens, is we have to take a look at what actually happened. Now, and in that moment, not what did you believe? Come on, you're a grown-ass adult, you know better. But there's a component of you that did believe it. that did believe that they weren't deserving or worthy. They didn't believe that they were good enough, and they definitely didn't believe that they were lovable. And when that part of you comes up, one of the main things I use is, that's okay, I understand. Because how many times for years have we tried to suppress, repress, and do everything to depress that voice out of our head? But now it's comes to one level of correction by going, that's okay, I understand. And going back to the original source of that is, regardless of what happened, you are lovable just the way you are. Regardless if your mom or dad could not show it to you, we're not there to help you, regardless of what happened. This is our vital to, when we connect with that little part, we then help that little part correct their misunderstanding of what happened. And this is where working with the different kinds of brain waves is important. Theta brain waves, for example, are what stage hypnotherapists put people into. Just so happens that that is the same brainwave pattern of a child between the ages of 2 to 5, or 2 to 8, actually. So if there's a stage hypnotherapist and they come up and they say, okay, you're a chicken, you're a chicken, you're a chicken. Or okay, when I say you're a chicken, you're a chicken, they're going to go cluck, 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 cluck. And if this child either hears, believes that they are unlovable, undeserving, unworthy, or not good enough, it anchors in that theta brainwave. So that's why cognitive work won't work. It just doesn't. It cannot connect with that little part of you. Cognitive, traditional, and the vast majority of psychotherapy, counseling, coaching wants to avoid the past and move forward. However, our brains are so tricky. When you do a positive affirmation, you say, I am good enough just the way it's already too late. When that security guard perceives the threat, it's already done. Your body's already gone into reaction. It shuts down. Emotions are high, and your entire logic about what you can do is gone. And this is where the default, and I'm going to do a little bit of neuroscience here, the default brainwave and default mode network of the brain is so fast, our entire body responds. And it's had to. This is not our fault. This is the way that we are. This is the way that our brain has worked. And so how do we integrate when we perceive this upset coming at us, but our body is already into reaction mode? One is go, that's okay, I understand. Integration is more important for lasting change and lasting shifts.
Who is saying it's okay, I understand?
That would be where me, as the grown adult, the logical part of my brain can then go to the little me down there that is feeling all of these things, me acknowledging to myself, that little part, that's okay, I understand. It makes the shift because typically, the vast majority of all relationships are for you to get your lovability from somebody else. You know, every Valentine's Day, all these cards that are being offered are like, you complete me, you make me whole. But this is different. This is where now you are the one that reassures and connects and corrects and maintains this relationship with that little part of you that has believed this for a long time. He's been left, or he or she has been left alone in the corner for so long. And this is where you aren't leaving little you. and it's not your fault.
Big you says to little you.
Exactly. And the big problem is, as adults, we know it wasn't our fault, but there's that part that still feels something different. And every single anxiety binding mechanism that has that turns into the addiction that promises you that you will feel good enough, all of a sudden leaves you feeling worse. It's the cycle. But now you're not looking for an external source to confirm those feelings, to correct that little part of you that feels it. It is something completely different. And that fight or flight response that is natural within our own body becomes a tend and befriend. No longer are we subject to the primitive part of our brain. And this is something when I say, it's not your fault. As the adult, our brains are wired for survival. They have been. We haven't evolved beyond a simple fight, flight, freeze response.
Or fawn.
And that's the one thing that isn't in there is fight, flight becomes tend and befriend, because most kids can't fight or flight. They freeze.
Mm-hmm. Or pretend and fawn.
Yeah. And that's it. And that's where all of a sudden, all of these, when that little part of them does not get corrected and merge, it's stuck. And that part of the brain is the anterior cingulate cortex. And the default mode network is so fast, it stimulates the amygdala and our vagus nerve that our whole body is into reaction before we even know it. And we've had to, because our survival has on this planet has required it. And if it hadn't, we wouldn't be here. That's logic. If we have not used our survival-based brain in whatever way we needed to, we would not be here. There are many lineages of families that have gone never to return because of that. And it's something that's weird, because I didn't realize this and I didn't study it in school for, I don't know why. 15,000 years ago, only 15,000 years ago, a meteorite destroyed the vast majority of mankind. It changed men to instantly revert back into this fight, flight, freeze response with survival mentality. And unfortunately, we're also looking at nothing that has changed our psychological approach to growth, evolution, maturity that has taken over this world. Regardless of what side you're on, it doesn't matter. Every time you see a mask, it stimulates the survival, fight, flight, fright response in the brain. And it reconfirms to that little part of you to be quiet, stay low, and maintain your silence. Now, is this a one-time thing, going through the process of permission and connection and correction and integration? Well, how many times were you told or yelled at to come up for dinner, come to the table for dinner? One time, right? That's all it ever took, was just one time? No. Why? We get distracted. Our lives are full of distraction. So there are going to be times where all of a sudden you're going to, oh my God, I just realized I'm so reactive. And that's not me. Where did I leave little Timmy? Oh my God, I think I left Timmy at the office, and those are the kind of things we have to maintain, this relationship that we're building. So what on earth are the benefits of doing all of this? If you take a look at those qualities of that little part of you, the ones that have been cut off, that have been left to the side, there are such a vast variety of emotions. Yes, there's anger, there's upset, there's belief that you're not good enough, you're unlovable, you're undeserving, you're unworthy. And all of that also shields curiosity, drive, passion. There are so many people that have cut off their anger. But when you cut off your anger, you cut off your passion. You throw the baby out with the bathwater. And you just take a look at what that little part of you inside is crying to come out. Because, wow, it's an amazing journey to explore.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that process. And the inner child reintegration process that I wanted to guide people in a visualization is all really about reintegrating all of those soul fragments, which are the inner children that we shut off the moment that we deemed an aspect of ourselves not good enough.